Coming up on Inside Westwood, hear from the Library Director, Tricia Perry, on upcoming programs, a recap of the election and preview of town meeting with Dottie Powers, and a hyper-in-depth look at the proposed Islington Center project, and more, coming up. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Inside Westwood. I'm your host, John Cummings, and Inside Westwood is a news program designed to keep residents informed about what's going on, what's coming up, and what's happened in our town. This is our last episode before the summer break. The library always has amazing programs to offer students, seniors, parents, and any Westwood resident. Library Director Tricia Perry stopped by the studio to talk a bit about what people can expect for this summer and beyond. Hello, would like to thank Tricia Perry, our Westwood Library Director, to come down, and she came down today to explain to us some of the programs that have come up this summer. Trish, thank you for coming down.
Thanks for having me, John. It's great to be here.
Oh, and you were on our inaugural show, so it's even more exciting to repeat.
It is.
Yay, thank you.
And much more comfortable than standing up against the wall.
Yes, yes, we've come a long way since there.
Yes, we have. Yep.
So this summer, you have a brand new program.
Yeah, we do. We have a couple of things coming out. Let me start with what I think is one of the most intriguing options that we're going to be offering. It's the homebound delivery for individuals who, for reasons of illness or injury, cannot get to the library and don't have a family member who could drive them or a best friend who, takes them on errands. So,
kind of like Books on Wheels.
Yeah, exactly. But it's for homebound. We think typically seniors. We have a group of volunteers and our Friends of the Library and the Council on Aging have collaborated. This is the bag for homebound delivery.
Oh, yeah, it's visual.
And anyone who's interested, we would invite you to come to the library, talk to Karen Gallagher or Lena Arena DeRosa at the Council on Aging, and we'll get you set up with a driver, and we can deliver books, CDs, movies, magazines.
Oh, what a great program.
Print. Yeah, and they'll come and they'll retrieve them too. So,
nice.
So that's one of the things.
So you can't even be late. There's no late fee.
There won't be any late fees, no. For this particular project, there's no late fees.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And there's another reading program for the summer.
There is, and let me just jump up here and grab that, because that fell off my lap. So every year, the Westwood Public Library hosts the summer reading program. And for the last 3 years, we've had children, adults, and teens. And this is this year's lawn sign for summer reading champions who live here. 50 hours of reading will get every child who finishes and completes 50 hours one of these green lawn signs. And it's very popular. And when you drive down the road, you can see how many of your friends and neighbors have readers.
Well read.
Exactly.
When will the signs start to appear in our local front yards?
The summer reading program kicks off the first week in June. And I would imagine that by the first week in July, we will have a few summer reading champion lawn signs in.
Well, that's
and
fantastic.
Installed.
Now, the kids that go away for the summer, can they still read and be part of the program?
Absolutely. You can pick up your reading logs. You can be part of the project. And just at the end of the summer, return them to the library and get credit for your hours, and we'll keep track of everybody. This year, there's a new twist. Lizzie and Christy have added a summer reading champion competition.
Ooh,
competition. So every student is invited to enroll. So by enrolling, you just register for summer reading, and the school that has the most number of participants as a percentage of their total student body will win a champion cup that will be displayed in their school library for the year.
Now, does it matter if it's the elementary school versus the middle school or high school?
No, it could be, we're thinking it's going to be mostly elementary, but it could be any of the schools.
There's 1,000 kids at the high school.
Right, so if 100 of the 1,000 kids register, they have a 10%, right? Is that?
Okay.
So, but if there's 300 kids, let's say at Deerfield, and 50 of them register, I'm not good at math, but I think that would be a higher percentage.
It's much higher. So 150 would be half, 50%.
Yes, exactly. So there you go. So it's not the number of students, it's the percentage. Yeah, and it's weighted. So we're hoping that this gets a lot of kids reading and gets a lot of green signs on lawns.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I do got to say, I love when you call at the library, your outgoing messages. is what?
Oh, it's happy reading.
Happy reading.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, and thank you very much for coming down. Is
Yeah.
there anything else that has just gone through? Or?
I would love to have everybody put a date on their calendar.
Okay.
So one of the projects that's dear to my heart is the Summer Reading Stepping Stone Project. I don't know if you've ever seen these, but
I haven't.
So last year we did 90 stepping stones. So on the Saturday before Father's Day, which I think is June 16th this year, from 9 to 1, just show up at the library, bring your friends, your neighbors, your family, your dog, and we'll create 10-inch stepping stones, concrete stepping stones that have all sorts of mosaic tiles and stones and
Kids decorate 'em.
imprints, yep, and alphabet letters. Last year, my fan favorite was the dog's footprint
Ooh.
that they put into the stepping stone. So you
Nice.
just, it's free to everybody. You just stop by.
What happens to
make
the
a
stepping stone?
So you let it sit overnight, and then you bring it home and put it in your garden, or give it to your grandma.
Oh,
Or,
you can bring it home.
yes,
Oh,
yes, yeah.
I thought there was a stone garden on the side.
Yeah,
the
no, we
east
have some that were, abandoned or donated.
Donated.
Mulligans that people forgot about or something. Let's see, what else can I tell you? I guess another new thing that we've started is a book buzz panel.
Book buzz?
Book buzz. So a panel of librarians get together, and it's every other month, and we present, anywhere between 20 and 25 book titles and review them basically. So it's a changing cast all the time of your favorite librarians. So this month it'll be Jenny and Claire from the branch,
Okay.
Susan White, and our newest children's librarian, Christy Pasquarello, and myself. And so on May 31st, that will be at the library, and you can find out some great new hits for summer reading or
Oh, that's
titles you might have
fantastic.
missed. And yeah, it's been very popular. And it really shows off some of the staff that
They're actually
read.
well read.
Oh, they just shine. They're great. Oh, yeah, they are. It's a very well read and very diverse reading. So Caroline likes to read cookbooks for
Oh.
fun. Patty Wade is a history fan. Susan White likes kind of dark, macabre, very dark mystery. Yeah, always with a twist. But no, it's great. So
Oh, fantastic.
that's one of my favorites. It was Claire Connors.
And when was that date again?
That's May 31st.
May 31st. That's the day after the town meeting.
Yes, the day
Ah,
after
very
the
good.
town meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
So you get some fun things to talk about.
A
and
little relief after the town meeting.
there you go.
right?
Some
Okay.
some fun
Oh,
reading.
good.
Yeah.
For the summer. Well, Trish, thank you very much for
Oh,
coming
John,
down.
it was a pleasure.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
Well, nice to see you. Following the tight races of the town election just a few weeks ago, Westwood officials are preparing for our town meeting. This will be held on Wednesday, May 30th at 7:30 in the gymnasium of the high school. I sat down with our town clerk, Dottie Powers, to get a recap of the elections and a rundown of what's coming up at the meeting. Dottie, thank you very much for coming down.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. You and Westwood Media Center. Appreciate it.
And this is our computer lab that we're in,
It's
which is
great.
different from our studio
Yeah.
exact.
I like the change up.
And the town elections are now a thing of the past and have been recorded and are in the books. How did that come through?
Town election came out, everything went wonderfully. The day was smooth. There was no hiccups, and we had a 24% turnout, which was great. More people came out than usual for a town election, so we like to see those numbers, and we always want to try to strive for more. So let's try
I
to
have a petition.
voters. Let's get out there. Let's try at least even 50%. It's
Don't
so
be afraid,
important.
it doesn't hurt.
It doesn't, and you know what? Every vote counts, and we saw that in this election.
They do count.
So it's very
There's some close ones.
important. Very important.
And the town meeting was pushed back into the 30th. So what does that mean as far as registering for the town meeting?
So because the town meeting now is outside of the 35-day window from town election, and it's a separate warrant, it's a whole new registration day. It's 20 days before, so that would be Thursday, May 10th. Town clerk's office will be open from 8:30 until 8 p.m. However, there's still many other ways that you can register. You don't have to come into the town clerk's office. You can do it by mail. As long as your application is postmarked by May 10th, we can still count it. And you can go online. The Secretary of State has a website, and you go onto their website, registering to vote online, and the town clerk's page also has the link to that.
So if you have kids that are doing their finals now that know they'll be home at the end of May, they want to go to the meeting, they can go online, even to the Westwood clerk's office page, and that'll
Absolutely.
follow it through.
Absolutely.
What do they need to prove that they're them and they live in Westwood?
So basically, you're signing anything under the pains and penalty of perjury. If you register online, what happens is you use either your license number or your social security, and the system kind of ties in, and if there's no match, that's when it will reject it. We'll get it back in our queue, and we have to send an actual physical hard copy for them to sign.
But as long as they've done it before the 10th.
As long as they've done it before the 10th.
The corrective can happen afterwards.
Absolutely. And another thing too is, let's say your birthday is going to be on, May 30th or May 29th. As long as you put that registration form in before the close of registration, which is on May 10th, you will be able to vote as long as you vote at town meeting, as long as you put the registration.
So a high school senior now that's 17 that turns 18 on the 21st of May can still register as a 17-year-old because they're going to be 18 for the meeting.
As long as they do it on or before May 10th.
Right.
And right now, we have a lot of the seniors. I helped with a drive up at the high school. We have a lot of the students that are 16 and 17 years old that pre-registered. So that's great too, because once they're 18, we get an automatic notice in our queue and we send them out a confirmation that they're a registered voter.
Oh.
So we've had quite a few kids do that too,
Such a
which
great
is
group
great.
of kids at the high school.
And they're so engaged,
Yeah.
which is wonderful.
So at the meeting, which is the town meeting, the Wednesday after Memorial Day, which is the 30th, that starts at what time, and are you going to try the electronic voting?
So the meeting is going to start, check-in starts at 6:30, and we anticipate a large crowd because we have, quite a few articles that will make a big impact in the community. And once check-in begins at 6:30, the meeting at 7 will start at 7 for oath of office for any new elected officials, and also for resolutions. And then at 7:30, the meeting will start promptly, the business portion of the meeting.
All right, so I know that the moderator she is finished as of this meeting, and the new moderator starts. When does that transition actually begin?
That's at the conclusion of town meeting. So the day following town meeting is when all the newly elected officials will be ready to start their roles.
If the town meeting goes 2 days?
Then it's at the conclusion, after the 2 days.
Okay.
Mhm.
And are you going to be using the electronic?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So what we're going to do is I'm in touch with a vendor, and we are going to do the pilot again. Unfortunately, we had some difficulties when we tried it in the fall, but I think we kind of rectified what the issues may have been. So we're going to get 1,500 devices in the event we have a large meeting. We'll be prepared. And so what we'll do in the beginning is we'll just do some test questions, and then it will be up to the moderator to decide if she wants to use the devices for any of the standing counts.
Okay, so if she's any questions, she always has the option.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that's very exciting. There's a number of articles,
There's 19 articles.
and some are going to be there's going to be great floor debate.
There will be. There will be. So, and I think it's really important that we get a good majority of the voters out, because if we have a small amount of people there, our quorum is 175. So 175 people, let's just say, making a decision for the whole community. And I think you can't complain if you don't go and voice your opinion, and your vote does count. And especially at town meetings, this is how we govern our town.
This is America at its finest.
It is. And, people are new to town and they may not understand how town meeting works, but that's how our town governs. We have selectmen and we have town meeting, which any important issues in terms of our charter bylaws, zoning bylaws, any important issues that affect the town are voted at town meeting.
Everything that needs the approval of the town is right there. And anybody that just
Absolutely.
moves to town can certainly, up until the 10th, register.
Absolutely.
And how about the dogs?
The dogs. So right now we have probably about 1,300 dogs licensed, and we know we have a lot more than that. So we still have, I'd say a couple of hundred people in town that have not licensed their dogs. And it's really important for a public health standpoint. We want to make sure that dogs are all vaccinated against rabies, and we have, at this point, we've done a grace period, and March 31st was the last day.
Okay,
So
I know that you had the senior program, so if,
we did. We had the senior program, which was great. All the seniors that have their dogs, 70 or older, they all have a license for their dog. So that worked
Perfect.
out wonderfully, and it wasn't really that impactful on the town, on the budget. I think we probably had about 75 people, so it really wasn't a large amount.
It's
And
better to have
I
them
have to
registered.
tell you, people were so grateful. They really were. When they came in, they actually still came in to register, and when we told them the fee was waived, they
That's
were
a nice thing.
the only thing that was hard was to try to, kind of gently, you're 70, so you get a little bit of a discount. So that was kind of a
Some people
kind
don't
of-
want to accept the fact they're 70.
exactly.
I know, I don't want to accept the fact that I'm
Yes.
70.
Yes. Yeah. Right now, if you haven't licensed your dog, there's a $25 late fee.
Ah,
So the next step will be the animal control officer may pay you a visit. So let's try to get those done before that
it's
happens.
a tough job, and they do a fantastic job.
They
too.
do. They do.
They take care of more than just the dogs. So just before we wrap it up, is there anything else?
Yeah, the only other thing is the annual town census. So we've sent a second mailing out, and that's another thing that's really important. If you don't answer your town census, you become inactivated as a voter, and we don't want to do that. So when you go to vote, you have to show your ID, you have to fill out paperwork that you still live in the town. So, it's something that, people aren't very happy about it, but it is a law, it's a mass law, that if you don't return a census, then you will be inactivated as a voter. So please make every effort to get those census back
How
to
else
us.
would we know who's supposed to be able to vote here?
Absolutely. That, and it's also for public safety. We need to know, how many occupants are in a home.
Yep.
It's also for funding,
Census, everything.
for senior, for a lot of programs that we know.
Did people have to come down to the clerk's office, or is there a form
They
that
don't.
they can?
There's on our webpage, on the town clerk's webpage, there's a PDF form. They can just download that and they can scan it and send it back to us. So they don't even have to use a stamp. Just email
They
it
can
back.
save a tree and just email it right back in.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. We
Or
want
they
to
could
make it
mail it
easy. Or they can mail it.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck at the upcoming meeting.
Thank
and
you.
We'll look forward to you up on the stage. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thanks a lot.
The proposed redevelopment of Islington is perhaps the biggest hot-button item this year at the town meeting. We sat down with Community and Economic Development Director Nora Loughnane to go over every aspect of the project. No stone was left unturned. Well, Nora, thank you very much for coming down to the studio in Westwood Media Center. And,
Thanks for having me.
After the town elections, the town meeting's coming up, and there's a huge buzz about all the articles.
Yeah, well, we have fewer articles than usual. It's actually only 19 articles on this town meeting, but they're all significant ones.
It would seem that it's going to go swiftly then. 19 articles.
We can hope, right? So we have the usual financial articles, and then there are a couple of school articles, and there's also 3 articles related to the Islington Center project. I think those 3 articles are probably among the ones that will generate the most interest among our residents.
And the school article, is that the one that Emily Parks came on the show talking about? They're looking for the money like up to, not to exceed 1.75 million?
Yes, so there are 2 school articles. One is for funds for design of the potential school project for funding by the state, and another is an article related to security improvements
Oh,
at the
yes.
school facilities. And then the 3 articles related to the Islington development. One is an article that would give the town the authorization to transfer property to a developer. One would authorize funding of some improvements to Wentworth Hall, and a third would make some zoning changes that are needed for that project to go forward.
In order for the project to go forward, all 3 have to pass.
They do.
How
And
come we didn't bundle them as one?
well, they all have to pass, they all have different standards. They're all required 2/3 of voter approval in
Okay.
order to pass, but they're different types of articles, so that's why they're separated. One is a land disposition article, one is a funding article, and one's a zoning article. So they all fall under different requirements, so they
That's why
stand
there's
on their
3.
own.
Okay.
They stand on their own, but all 3 would need 2/3 passage in order for the project to go forward.
So if you wouldn't mind spending some time on the Islington, I've heard a tremendous amount of debate, and I've watched a number of the FinCom meetings on the Westwood Media.tv and from last year at the town meeting.
So there's been no shortage of discussion on this
Yes.
project.
You know what I've found is that there's a lot of guesswork going on. So if we could nail down some of the facts of
Sure,
what's
I'd
going on.
be happy to do that.
Oh,
So
thank you.
first, to explain the process. We have been discussing this project for 2.5 years now. We started with the Islington Task Force developing an RFP, a request for proposals, that was sent out in May of 2016. So they took a few months to develop that, then we sent it out. We received one proposal from Tricia Properties in June of 2016, and the task force began reviewing that in September of that year. This task force has had 12 different meeting sessions on this, all publicly open, many of them that attracted significant numbers of residents, all filmed by Westwood Media Center. And then eventually they recommended one of the project proposals, which was called Option 6, to the selectmen. The selectmen reviewed that over the summer, I guess that would have been in 2017, and sent it on to the planning board. The planning board then considered a flexible multiple use overlay district special permit for the project, which they approved after 6 hearing sessions. Again, 6 public open hearing sessions with comment from multiple residents. Then the Conservation Commission.
And recorded by the Westwood
And
Media
recorded by Westwood Media Center. Then the Conservation Commission had to also review the project. They did that in a joint meeting with the planning board, followed by a full public hearing, and they voted just on the 25th of April to issue an order of conditions for the project to go forward.
So basically, they're for it.
Yes, they are for it.
They're giving it their blessing.
Yes, so
Conservation
the
Committee.
selectmen have supported it, the planning board has supported, Conservation Commission, the Islington Center Task Force have all been in support of this project. And then just this past week, it went before the Finance and Warrant Commission, who also held 4 separate hearings on this, which was very much appreciated. Usually there are 2 Finance and Warrant Commission hearings before a town meeting, and in this case they had 2 additional hearings to get additional information and allow complete, open, full discussion on the project. And then they eventually, at the end of their meeting last week, they also granted support for the project and are sending it to town meeting with a recommendation for approval.
At the FinCom meeting last, they talked a lot about what the property values were. Like that was missing from the previous discussions.
So in previous discussions, we gave whatever information we had. Although the project has been discussed and I guess reformulated over the last 2.5 years, as it gets closer to the end, we've actually been narrowing down towards the end of negotiations. And we just reached that point before the last hearing. So to explain what the project is, the town would be swapping land with Tricia Properties. Right now, the town owns land on both the west side of Washington Street and the east side at the intersection of School Street and East Street. We own 4 parcels, and the developer owns 3 parcels, and also has an option on a 4th parcel that is a residential parcel behind the municipal lot. So under this proposal, the town would take all 4 parcels and would initially sell those to the developer. The developer would then sell back to the town a new parcel that's in the general area of the municipal parking lot now, but also takes part of the land behind the Islington Tailor Shop, Westwood Tailor Shop, which has been closed for a couple of years, and it takes a residential property that the developer has under agreement, the Cohen property at 277A Washington Street. So those.
Which one is that, the Cohen property?
You can't actually see it. It's behind the municipal parking lot and I believe it has its access through the Northeast Security Building, yes, next door. So those 3 parcels would be combined, and the town would take that back from the developer. The town would then give the developer all the land on the east side of Washington Street, which is where the ICC sits and where Wentworth Hall, that most people know that as the Islington Branch Library building. So the developer would end up with all except for 1 parcel that the town would own on the west side. The town would use that parcel both for a 32-spot municipal parking lot, just like the one they have now, and for relocation of the Wentworth Hall building, the Islington Branch Library building. We would move the building across the street, fully renovate the library, completely rebuild the building to give it a new roof, new siding, new windows, put an addition on the rear of the building that's approximately equal to the size of the library for youth and family services offices, and then put a full lower level hall that would go in there that would be used for community events, for recreation programs, and for library and the youth and family service office to use as well. A new meeting hall that would actually be larger than either the hall in the basement of the ICC now or the old sanctuary that's also used for meeting spaces.
Wow.
So it'll be a great brand new space, fully
Better
code
sound than the
compliant.
sanctuary. That doesn't
Better
bother me.
sound, more energy efficient, fully accessible. We'd put an elevator into the building, handicapped accessible entrance, new handicap restrooms. It'll be a great new state-of-the-art building that maintains the appearance of the historic Wentworth Hall. So that's what the town would end up with. What the developer would end up with is a new CVS building on the corner of Washington and School Street. So right where Cafe Diva is now and where the tailor shop is, there'd be a new CVS building. Be just under 10,000 square feet in size. When the project was first proposed, it was closer to 13,000 square feet, and it had a drive-through. The project's evolved over time in reaction to comments from many residents who took the time to come out to all these different
At the
meetings.
Islington Task Force?
Islington Task Force, Planning Board, and Board of Selectmen meetings. And the developer and the town listened to all those comments. They reduced the size of the CVS, and they eliminated the drive-through. So now we have a new CVS building, slightly larger than the existing one. The existing one is just under 8,000 square feet, and this would be just under 10,000, but without a drive-through. It'll have some 2 spaces reserved for curbside pickup, so you'll still have the benefits of being able to get there if you need medication and don't want to get out of the car. You'll be able to have it delivered to your car. Then on the other side, on the east
That's
side,
nice for parents and elderly.
it is,
you got a sick
especially
kid in the car.
a sick kid in the car. You don't want to go in,
Can't
or
just
it's
walk away from the car. That's
you
just
run
a
out
no-no
late at
nowadays.
night, not dressed to the nines, and don't want to go into the store. So then that's what would be on the west side of the street. So you'd have CVS, you'd have the new municipal Wentworth Hall, so library, youth and family services, and community space. And there's a parcel that we're also reserving on that side of the street, which could be a future home for the Blue Heart Tavern. That's a historic building that used to be where 321 Washington Street is. It was put on blocks and moved to the area where the tailor shop is over 2 years ago in the
It's just
hopes of
sitting in the
finding
parking
someone to
lot of the
renovate it.
tailors.
Yes. We had not been successful in finding anyone to renovate it, mainly because there was nowhere to put it. So we've now found a space, carved out a space right on Washington Street, right next to where we'd put Wentworth Hall, and that will be reserved for someone who's willing to restore that building.
So when you came down, let's say from St. Denis, on that side of the road, first you'd come to the Islington Library. Behind that would be the community center?
Yes, but first you'd actually come to the Blue Heart Tavern, assuming that gets
Okay,
renovated.
so
So
on
the
that
land
side.
for the Blue Heart Tavern would be right next to
Whatever
Northeast
that
Security.
becomes.
Right, then you'd come to the Wentworth Hall, the Islington Library, with the addition behind it, and then you'd
And then the
come on the
CVS.
corner to CVS.
Because like the Colburn is now at the bank with
Exactly,
modified.
yes. So we had great success with that. There we
Yes.
had an old
took a long
historic
time, too.
building, had to be put up on blocks for a while. We put out an RFP, we searched, and after a while, we were able to
Somebody
find a
came through.
successful user, and it's been great. And that's also an example of retail on the first floor, residential above, mixed-use building, which has been a great success.
And it looks good.
It looks great. It has 6 two-bedroom apartments in it, and they're working out very
Okay,
well for
so
the town.
coming down from St. Denis on the left side of the road, or the east side, where your first building we're coming to, I want to say is, I'm going to call it the ski shop building?
So that building is actually outside of this project, but
Mm-hmm.
owned by the same developer. So
Okay.
Petruziello Properties owns the former ski stop building, and they're working on redeveloping that right now. Matt the Barber has moved into the first floor, and there's
Okay.
another second commercial space that they're readying on the first floor.
Where the ski shop was itself?
Where the ski shop was. And my understanding is that is going to be occupied by the tailor, who currently is at Crown Cleaners. The
Oh,
tailor
okay.
wants their own space. They want to expand their business.
Better parking.
Right, so that's where they're going to locate. So you'll
I
have that
noticed
building
they had a
that's.
few different doors.
They did. They used to have a center entrance to
And
the
then
ski
you'd walk
stop,
upstairs or
which also
into the
brought you
ski
the
shop.
apartments. Now there'll be 3 doors. That center door will be for the 2 apartments upstairs,
Okay.
and each of the other commercial spaces, Matt the Barber and the other space, which I believe will be a
Potentially dry
tailor,
cleaner.
will have their own entrance.
Okay.
But that's outside the project, just being done by the
Okay.
same developer.
So the next coming up,
So then you come up, you go past Sally and Rocco's, and you get to the current CVS building. That would be the start of the land that's within the Islington Center redevelopment project. So the current CVS building is owned by Petruziello, and then the 2 next parcels, the Wentworth Hall parcel and the ICC, Islington Community Center parcel, are owned by the town. So on that side of the street, the town would turn over all the land to Petruziello Properties, and they would first reconstruct the CVS building to convert it into a space for MMO that would be accessed through the back, if you're familiar with that property now where CVS entrance is on the back,
yes.
there's a significant change in grade. So they would redesign the building and put an entrance for MMO on the back of the building where they would have an at-grade entrance, would have an elevator, would have an outdoor playground. So right now you have that playground that's kind of sandwiched
Yes.
between East Street and the very busy driveway into CVS and the library parking lot. They would have a new, more secluded playground that's adjacent to
Nice.
that building further.
Not
in.
right on traffic.
Not right on traffic, no. And then a new mixed-use building would be built across the site of the ICC and Wentworth Hall. So where the town-owned land is now, that would be a new mixed-use building. It would have about 13,000 square feet of commercial uses on the first floor, which would hopefully include a restaurant, coffee shop, and some retail. And then it would have 18 condominiums located on the second and the third floor. It would have full parking for all of those uses underneath the building for the business owners and for the condo owners. They would have their parking
So that wouldn't take up any of the
underneath.
parking
That
for
would
the customers
not.
or anything else?
So customer parking would be surface parking that would be out and back. And that would be an open shared lot that would be shared by both the mixed-use building and by the former CVS, now MMO building. The MMO building would also have the space that's now occupied by CVS freed up for another commercial business to go in that space.
Okay, so from the corner, it would be mixed use up
Mixed-use.
top,
Mixed
retail
use
downstairs.
condos up top, retail
And
or
then on
restaurants downstairs,
The first
parking
floor, the
below.
grade level from the behind would be where MMO would be.
MMO would not be in the mixed-use building, they'd be in the next building down. So,
Okay.
right, so the first building would be parking, retail, restaurant, condos above, and then the building next to it, where CVS is, would be MMO on the bottom, and then retail on the first floor that's
Oh, very
accessible
nice.
from Washington Street.
So it's
where you
further away
walk
from East
into-
Street.
It is further away from East Street. But it would be a complete change in the look of that building.
Yes.
Right now, the CVS building has a somewhat dated look, and this would be changing the appearance of the building to more closely fit in with the village aesthetic in Islington Center.
Excellent. And I noticed there, it looked like there was almost a small parking lot facing Morrison Field. So that if someone was inclined,
Yes,
They
they
could
would be
borrow
able
a
to park
spot.
there. So one of the other benefits of this project is that the town will receive parking easements across all of the privately owned spaces. So we'll have our 32-space municipal lot on the far side of Washington Street, just as we have now, but we'll also have easements to allow the public to park in any of the parking spaces, whether at CVS or at the mixed-use building or at the MMO building.
any of the service.
Any of the surface parking spaces,
Okay.
not the underground. Those will be private parking spaces. So if you're visiting Morrison Park, you will still have the opportunity to park there if the spots at Morrison Park are full.
And take your chances crossing the street.
Well, that's what we'll encourage you not to take your chances. We will continue to encourage anyone who parks on that side of the street to access Morrison Park to go up to the corner and cross safely at the light. That
At the
is
crosswalk?
the only reasonable.
I don't know if that's going to be possible. Crosswalks are, tricky business.
Signalized crosswalks are the only way to go, especially
Traffic
when you're
stopping
crossing
behind
children.
the crosswalk or zipping through the. Hopefully, everybody will make the right decision on that.
I hope so.
So, all in all, if you had to balance what the town of Westwood gets out of this deal, land-wise only.
Okay, just looking at land, the town ends up selling just over a half an acre of land. So we started out with, I think, 1.6 acres of land, and we end up with either 0.89 or 0.93. The difference there is whether the town takes the Blue Heart Tavern lot or if that goes to either the developer or a private individual.
Whoever picks up
Whoever
the-
wants to
okay.
restore the building. So the best case in that is that it's another private individual that wants to restore that. They get that land. If they don't, and if the developer doesn't want to restore that property, we get the land. And then the town can make a decision in the future
What to do with
what
the
to do
Blue Heart.
with it, right.
But if any developer X comes in, there's a spot for them to put it.
There is, that's
And
right.
all we're looking for them is to make the building
To
up
make
to
the
code
build,
and
yes,
beautiful.
to restore it and reuse it
Okay.
for
Well,
one of the
that's a pretty good
purposes
deal for
allowed
them
under
as well.
zoning. It is. It's a great deal all around. So if you look at the value of that, just over a half an acre, and if you look at the price per acre, we're receiving, in addition to the land swap, we're receiving $2.2 million from the developer. What I should say is a minimum of $2.2 million. The selectmen have agreed to a land disposition agreement in concept. If town meeting approves it, they can actually sign that land disposition agreement. But we have the draft, and that draft calls for a minimum of $2.2 million to come to the town from the developer, or whatever value is associated above that amount by an appraisal that's done at the time of the last transfer of land. It's a little bit complicated, but there'll be 3 phases of development. The first phase will be the CVS on the west side of Washington Street. The second phase will be the MMO building on the east side of Washington Street. And then the third phase will be the mixed-use building. So when we're ready to sell property for the third phase, when that's about to happen, we'll reappraise the land. And if it happens to come in at a value over $2.2 million, the town will get that increased value.
And if it comes in under?
We still get $2.2 million. So $2.2 million for just
That's
over
a
a
great-
half an acre, it works
good
out
sales.
to about $3.6 million an acre. If you're familiar with Westwood land values, they're high, but they're
not
nowhere
that
near
high.
that.
That's,
They're nowhere near that.
that's pretty sharp. That's
It
good.
is.
All right, so that leads me to, well, let me make sure, I want to make sure I get all the numbers.
So,
Yes.
so $2.2 million to sell the land. Increased annual taxes. Right now, the taxes that are being generated in the Islington area where these parcels are, it's roughly $62,000 a year. That will increase to about $480,000 a year after the project is complete. Even if you take into account the fact that right now we're getting a lease payment from MMO, which we won't get in the future, and you look at all the cost of renovating the building and associated costs with operation and maintenance, we will still have a net value, a net annual revenue for the town of over $423,000 coming from those parcels.
A year?
A year. And
Wow.
that deducts costs that are anticipated for school costs. There could be as many as 3 children in the 18 condominiums. So there's a cost associated for that. There's increased fire and police costs that are always assigned to residential units over and above commercial, so that's taken into account. So it's still, the positive goes from about $62,000 to about $423,000
And we retained almost
a
the
year.
same amount of land minus the small parcel that was sold for a couple $1 million.
Right. We
Not bad.
give up just about a little bit more than a half an acre of land.
All right, so another issue that's kicked right around here is the housing.
Yes.
Commonwealth says we need to have 10%.
Right.
If
So
we don't have 10%,
then we become eligible for any unfriendly 40B project that's proposed in Westwood. So right now, Westwood's above 10%. We have been since
close
the
are we?
approval of the University Station project. So it's a moving target to see how close we are. The calculations will be redone in 2020 after the census. If I look at a snapshot today of what buildings have been constructed and what is permitted but not yet constructed, I can tell you that we'll be between 9 and 21 units short. It'll all depend on how many units that have been approved actually are constructed and what the timing of those are.
let me make sure. So the Commonwealth only counts the properties that are finished.
That are
with a
finished with a certificate of
occupancy.
occupancy. Right.
So that's the big number, and the percentage from that has to be 10%.
Has to be 10%. So we look at
And
all
it's
the units.
not size of the houses.
Right, so we look at single-family homes, two-family homes, multifamily homes, we look at condos, we look at apartments, we look at every housing unit in town. We think that in 2020, the Department of Housing and Community Development will look at our total number of housing units and will include in that total number the number of accessory apartments as well as the number of memory care units. They did not exist when the 2010 census was done. And at that time, it was thought that memory care units would be treated much like a nursing home, that the residents are there on a shorter term basis. It's not really considered housing, it's considered long-term care. So the assumption, as far back as when the University Station project was approved in 2013, was that memory care units would be treated as long-term care facility, a commercial use and not counted. We have seen since then, there was a guide that came out from the Department of Housing and Community Development in 2014, which defines assisted living facility, and it defines it in a way that we believe includes memory care facilities, and for that reason, we expect them to count those. So at University Station, there are 64 memory care units. It will require 7 affordable housing units to offset those. On the other side of town, at Fox Hill Village, they have White Oaks Cottage. They were developed, I believe, may have been 2010, 2011. They have 24 units, so another 3 units would be needed to counteract those if they're counted as housing units. So all in all, we take all the single-family houses that were built since 2010, any 2 families that were built since then, all of the apartments that were built since then, we add those up and we get a calculation of how many total housing units we have in Westwood, and then we figure 10% of that, and we look to see where we would be short. So if none of the permitted units that we have at subdivisions like the Westwood Estate subdivision off of Canton Street, if those are not built before 2020, we'll be at the low end of that 9 to 21 units. If they're built, we'll move up to the higher end. And that goes for some other projects in town. There are house lots that have been split. If you have at least the minimum amount of area and the minimum amount of frontage on your property, you can, for 2 lots, you can subdivide. It's called an approval not required plan, and the planning board has no choice but to sign that, and then you can build another house on that. So there are always ways that we can expect to see additional housing units come on, and we have to plan for them. So in planning for them, we always take a look to see what we think our shortfall will be. And as of today, I can tell you it'll be somewhere between 9 and 21 units. And one of the benefits of the Islington Center redevelopment project is that this project, although it's required to add 3 units of affordable housing to our inventory, subsidized housing inventory, which the state regulates, we have structured a deal with the developer that would actually see 12 units of housing added to the subsidized housing inventory. That's great. That's an additional 9 units
How'd you do that?
that we otherwise wouldn't need. Well, we did it in a somewhat creative way.
If this
gets approved.
All right.
Right, if this gets approved, we would see not only the 3 units that are required from this, but another 9 units. A total of 12 units get added to our SHI. We're short. We think we'll be short between 9 and 21. That gets us certainly a long way towards our goal of staying above 10%. So how we did that. The 18 condominium units that are proposed in this project, the bylaw requires 15% of all new units to be affordable, or such other provisions as the planning board approves. The planning board approved a plan where the developer takes other units he owns in Islington Center. They're 1-bedroom
The one that was just
apartments.
built next
One
to-
is at 321 Washington Street. That's the
Next to
new
Islington
mixed-use
Pizza.
project. Yes, the one that has a physical therapy office and
Mhm.
dentist on the first floor. It has 12 units of housing above. 2 of those units were required to be affordable under that special permit approval, and they've been approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development, and they're listed as affordable units. So that's 2 out of the 12. When we add 1 more, the developer restricts 1 more of those apartments as affordable housing. That's now 3 out of 12. That makes that building a 25% affordable building, and the provisions of 40B allow 25% affordable buildings to be counted,
Count the whole
all
building.
of the units.
So all 12 units.
Right. We did something very similar at University Station.
Right.
We had Gables 1 and 2, and Gables 2 is a 25%
So we
affordable
get to
building,
count
so we
all those.
count all of the units in that building. So a similar procedure here that would get us not only to count those, so 10 additional units in the 321 Washington Street building, and then the 2 actual affordable units that'll be in another building in Islington that the
All right,
developer
that's a
owns.
whole lot. Let me recap just to make sure I have it.
Mhm.
So every 10 years, there's a census taken.
Right.
2010 was the last one, 2020 is the next, based upon how many units Westwood has. Now, it's increased because people are building more houses.
Mhm.
As they build up, whatever the number is at 2010, 10% of that needs to be low-income housing.
In 2020, right.
I'm sorry, 2020. Whatever it was in 2010, we had more than 10%. Since
Yes.
then, we've lost the Glen, which had a number
We
of
lost
units.
Westwood Glen, right. Westwood Glen had 156 units of affordable housing. It was an early housing program. It was restricted under a housing loan, a mass housing loan, and we had received notice as early as 2012 that
It was gonna
loan
roll off, and
deal
that
was
would be it.
expiring in 2013. So we were preparing for that, which is one of the reasons we brokered a deal with University Station to get as high as we did. That kept us above 10%, as long as we're counting units under the 2010 census. When we count units under the 2020 census, we expect to fall below. So that's why we need these additional units.
Right, so on the 2020 census, we've increased our amount of units or houses in Westwood. The 10% number we're very close, we're probably like 9.8, 9.9, and the delta is somewhere between 1 and 20 houses.
Right.
Units.
Well, I'd say it's at least 9 units that
9
we know
units.
will be short.
If Islington goes through, then that adds 12 to our
To our
low-income
affordable
stock.
housing count, right, to our
That's a
subsidized housing
+3
inventory.
in my world.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I would say that, right.
Okay.
We will
And
have
those
at
buildings
least
are already
3
built.
above the minimum number we think we need.
Right, and because
they're
those units are
existing
built,
units.
so
That's
we don't have to
right.
wait for them to get their certificate of occupancy.
That's right.
Whereas Islington itself, maybe 2021.
It could
which
be.
is too late for
So-
2020.
Right, so we don't know exactly the timing yet of the 18 condo units and whether they'll come in before the census or after the census, so that
Okay.
remains to be seen. But we do know that one of the provisions of the deal, if this project goes forward, is that those units in 321 Washington Street, those 10 additional units, have to be listed on the subsidized housing inventory before the first transaction occurs. Before we sell land to the developer to build CVS,
Right.
those units must be listed. That's the very first step.
So put that, and not, and I just want to make sure that, because I think it's important for people to understand exactly what is at stake, and not a scare tactic, but because I've seen it happen in other neighborhoods if you drive by on 128 in Needham.
Yes.
If Islington doesn't go through, and the owner of those properties says, you know what, I tried, I'm going to sell it to somebody else, that somebody else waits, they know that the numbers are going to be short in 2020, so we don't make the 10%. A developer comes in, he can be an unfriendly 40B, which means he doesn't have to follow any rules except for
Our
building it
zoning,
correctly.
right, our zoning rules do not apply to a 40B project. As long as we stay above 10%, we are not subject to any unfriendly 40B projects. We can still cooperate with a developer, and we can work on a project that's beneficial to the town. We remain in
We have
control.
some input.
Right. If we fall below 10%, we lose a lot of that leverage. Zoning bylaws don't apply. That means setback requirements, building height requirements, aesthetic requirements, none of those apply. What happens is a developer would come to the town, they would go to the zoning board, they'd bypass the planning board, go right to the zoning board with a project for residential use that's at least 25% affordable. That's how they get into the 40B standard. So they could come in with a project that could be much larger than anything we'd approve and would not be limited to 1 or
No.
2 bedrooms.
How many could it be, let's say, on the current CVS side of the road, on the east side?
So because the zoning requirements don't apply, really the determining factor is parking. If you can fit enough cars
So if they put
to
parking
service the
underneath, they
property.
could add in more units?
Yes, if they put parking underneath, they could get as many as 40 apartment units on the existing CVS
Just where the CVS is
property.
now?
Yes, I know it's hard to imagine, but keep in mind, you don't have setback requirements, you don't have buffer requirements, and you don't have height requirements. So you could build a tall building that fills the
They still have to
property
have a
with
sidewalk.
parking underneath. Oh yes, they'd have to build on their own land. They
Okay.
could not take away the sidewalk in the public
Okay.
right-of-way. But they could
It
fill
would just be
that land to
probably a
a significant extent.
Like the one
It
on
could be.
128?
So just to be clear, if anything like that happened, the town would continue to work with the developer who was proposing that and would do our best to get it down to standards that are closer to what Westwood would like to see there, but we would lose leverage. We would not have the ability to apply the bylaws that we
Well,
have now.
Not done with my math. All right, so on the other side of the street, so that's the east side of the street. So on the west side, St. Denis side, there is property there that he owns as well. If he's, assuming that he sold
Yes.
that property as well,
So there's
how many units could
there's
go
the
there?
Cafe Diva building, and
Yeah.
then there's a tailor shop
Yeah.
property. And combining those, depending on how you designed it, you could have anywhere from 20 to 28 units of housing. It would all depend on how you fit it on the property, what size
Parking.
the units were. Parking is, again, the determinant factor. That side of the street is not as, wouldn't be as easy to have underground parking, so I think it would be more limited on that side of the street.
Okay.
The east side would be very easy to develop underground parking, so that would enable a greater number of units. But so yeah, so up to 40 units on the east side of the street, 20 to 28 on the west side of the street. But those are all only if we get to the point where we fall below 10% and we're subject to a potential 40B. I'd also point out that that doesn't mean it would be there. There could be a potential 40B anywhere in town. It could be on residential property, commercial property, industrial property. Every parcel in a town, if you fall below 10%, is subject to a potential 40B. So
I
a
can't
developer
imagine the
just has to.
developer that's there now, after spending so many hours with the Islington Task Force and the town, keeping it and saying, maybe I'll try it again, whereas someone comes to him at 2020 and says, hey, I'll take it off your hands.
I think the one thing we know is that it won't stay the way it is. Whatever goes forward, if this project goes forward, I think we have a good idea of what we'll see. We have plans that have now been
Years of
approved.
planning in progress,
And we
or
have
whatever comes out
what
of
I
it.
believe is a significantly beneficial project that's proposed. If that doesn't get approved at town meeting by 2/3, something else will happen. Those properties have value. The developer who owns them now purchased them for significant funds and will seek to return the investment at some point, whether they're developed for commercial uses, or if it happens that we fall below 10% on our subsidized housing inventory, if they're developed for residential purposes, we'll see that down the line. But my hope is that we don't get to that. My
hope we
hope
don't get
is
to
that
that
we have residents come out to town meeting and look at the benefits
This all
of the
gets decided at the
project.
town meeting on the 30th.
It does. May 30th, Wednesday night, beginning
So
at 7 p.m.
If you're going to go to one town meeting, this could be a huge one to go to.
I would agree with that.
I mean, and this doesn't just affect Islington. If you went to the Washington side, let's say the Hood family that owns all that, if they decided to sell it, they could, and it's an Un-40, they could put it right there.
On the High Street side, yes.
Right.
There's the Good property, there's the Dunkin' Donuts Plaza further down the road. Those are commercially zoned properties. But it's also, you know, our residential neighborhoods. You mentioned Needham before. That was an example where a developer bought a parcel of land, assembled several parcels of land, just in the middle of a neighborhood.
Right.
Same thing could happen in Westwood. So
And they fought it. The neighborhood fought it. I think there was like 16 proposed units. They fought it. It took 4 or 5 years, and the neighborhood finally won. The developer sold that money, sold that property. The new developer came in, and Needham was at that point then.
they were below their 10%, so they were.
That's
they
what the
didn't have
unfriendly
leverage.
40B goes, and that's they just
Correct.
put that huge place up instead of 16 units.
It is, and it's very
It's huge.
different. It's very different than the character of the old neighborhood will be changed significantly by
Those
that
gone.
new development. And one other thing I should mention is that, I don't know if I touched on that, but when the town has approved apartments or these condos, we've been careful to limit it to 1 or 2 bedrooms. And the reason for that is to keep a handle on this number of school children that would come from this multifamily development. We certainly see in our single-family homes, we often have 3, 4, or more students that come from a single-family home. The numbers from apartments and condos are lower. So for instance, the 18 units that are proposed for Islington are expected to have 3 students living in those, in the whole 18 units.
Islington project it is now.
Right, but a 40B project's a little bit different. The state requires a minimum of 10% of the 40B units to be 3-bedroom units. 3-bedroom units clearly
That's a
attract
whole family.
families with children. Right, so we would see increased numbers of children that would come out of those. So we don't know where the 40B projects would go. We don't know what they'd look like exactly, but we do know that they would have to have a minimum of 10% of their units would be 3-bedroom apartments or condos.
Wow.
So that's just something to keep in mind. We're trying to maintain control. We're trying to make sure that development in Westwood is in accordance with the zoning bylaws that the town residents voted for. And we maintain that control by staying above 10%. This project will go a long way to helping us stay above 10%.
Well, I can't tell you how incredibly thankful I am that you came down to share all this. A number of times at town meeting, I've heard people say, well, I wish we knew we voted for this because that would have done that. And people really don't have enough time to research, which is why they have a FinCom
Right.
that spends hundreds of hours a year on it. And we also had the Islington Task Force that spent hundreds of hours. And thank you to everyone that's volunteered on that. And if you know someone that's been on any of those volunteer boards, please thank them. They're doing all of this for us because they think it's the right thing to do. And so so far, every board has been in favor of the Islington.
Every single board that's reviewed
Right, so
this
that's good.
project has been in favor.
The monetary value is, we did a good job as far as brokering the deal.
We did an excellent job. So
And it will help us out on the housing
Right.
if it goes through.
We have properties that have been assessed and by the town. We have appraisals for those properties, and now we have a proposal, an offer from the developer that well exceeds either of those values. So financially, it's beneficial. The character of the project is designed to be in keeping with Islington Center. One of the complaints about the project when it was first proposed almost 2.5 years ago was concerned that the loss of the character of the ICC building, the former Islington Community Church, would be lost in Islington. The developer agreed to create a new building that mimics that to a
Because of
certain
the steeple.
extent.
I do like the steeple.
But it's has a replica facade, so
Okay.
you get the steeple and you
You
get
get
the
the effect.
pediment, yes, of that building. And the rest of the design is gable-ended buildings that
Yeah,
are
it's beautiful.
appropriately
It's on the planning
designed.
board webpage.
It
right?
is. So I encourage
3D model.
anyone who wants to see more information, watch the videos on Westwood Media Center for the past 2.5 years. I know that's time consuming, but maybe
You can
take a
fast
look
forward
at
to the
the
boring stuff.
take a look at the planning board website. There's a section called Current Planning Board Applications, and every document that the planning board reviewed is on that page. So you can see the site plans, the architectural plans, the renderings. You can see the traffic study that was proposed for this. You can see the fiscal reports. Everything that went into this project is there.
Is in there. So one of my friends is going to say, John, that was all fake. That's all, people are just making up their numbers and it's a scare tactic. How can they research? Let's say that they obviously are passionate about it. If one of my friends wants to find out, is it true, where can they go to find
On
out?
the website, we have every document, every report. They can also give me a call. I'd be happy to walk them through the numbers and see.
Okay.
We don't pull these out of the air. We
I
don't
know
make it up.
that, and I appreciate all
It's
the time
all
that you really put in.
documented by consultants, professional consultants who are hired to do that. A professional appraiser, a professional peer review consultant in the fiscal field, an architect, engineer. Parking, that's another concern that was raised. There was a concern that there wouldn't be enough parking. This project adds far more parking than is there now. Right now there are 100 parking spaces on these properties, and there's a demand for 100 parking spaces. So every space that's needed every space that's there is actually needed for the uses that are there. Under the proposal, if this goes through, there'll be 178 parking spaces, and the need is 163. So there'll be not only more parking spaces than are there currently, but there'll be more parking spaces that are needed, and at least 15 parking spaces that are additional beyond the uses that are on this project.
Bonus. Okay. I can't thank you enough for coming down. That was
Well, thank
that was
you,
awesome.
John.
And I hope everyone gets out to the town meeting on the 30th, which is the Wednesday afterwards. It's, Dottie came by the studio, and she said that the medium starts at 6:30 and the award ceremony starts at 7. So right after that, we get into it. There's only 19 articles.
Right?
And the Islington articles, there's 3 that really is one, all 3 have to pass.
They do.
Would you say the 7, 8, 9, or
11, 12, and 13.
11, 12, and
are the
13?
most of the articles in the front of the town meeting are
It's the-
financial budgeting
the budget and
articles.
all that.
Once those get passed, we'll move right into the Islington Center articles. There are also the school articles that are
Yep.
on the agenda. There's a petition article as well, petitioner zoning
Petition
article.
article. All important stuff. So be good Americans. Come on out and vote. It's your right, and you don't get to complain afterwards if you don't. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
All right. We spoke with Hale Director Eric Arnold last month about the centennial celebration of the Hale Reservation and heard about many of the wonderful events that he would be putting on this summer. Hale also held their annual meeting for sponsors and staff. This is my favorite segment of Inside Westwood, Into the Woods. The annual Memorial Day Parade will be held on Monday, May 28th. The route will start at the Town Hall at 10 a.m. and will go down to the new cemetery where there will be a formal ceremony. The Westwood Young Women's Club will be hosting their annual Touch a Truck event on June 9th from 10 a.m. until 1. The event, which will be horn-free until noon, has everything from large vehicles and trucks, a petting zoo, train rides, even a helicopter. It is $10 per person or $20 per family, and all proceeds will benefit the women's charity Dignity Matters. Finally, please don't forget to attend the town meeting on Wednesday, May 30th. It's important for everyone. Please attend and make a difference in our town. Every vote matters. Don't forget to check out our interactive community calendar at westwoodmediacenter.tv/calendar. Everything from COA programs to government meetings to community events can all be found in one easy location. Thank you, have a great summer, and Godspeed.